Okay, hi again everyone. We're now going to look at how we can use the table that we've just created to actually calculate the interest for each one of these problems. So you'll notice that I've created you a tab down the bottom here for each one of the problems, and when you click on that tab, it asks you, when it finally comes up, to paste the first row of the question in the table here, because that's the only information we're going to use. So let's go back to the question and let's highlight this first row, Command C, and then let's pop it in here, Command V. So what else we might just like to do is actually put this row in as well, so that we can see what all these details are. Alright, I'll just smarten it up a bit. So here is our situation. We've got 12% interest. The number of compounds in a year is going to be 1. The interest is 12%. The term is 3 years. So we want to set up a table that's going to do our calculations for us. So we're going to create a new table here, and we're going to use the word balance, which is going to be how much money we have in our account. We're going to have our interest calculated here, and we might call this one balance at start, and we'll call this one balance at end. So that balance at the start and balance at the end is representing how much money we had at the start of the term, i.e. how long and how much money there is at the end of the term. So if we go back to our problem, we're told that we have $8,000. So we'll pop $8,000 into here. And we now have to calculate the interest. Now remember, our interest is going to be I equals PRT divided by 100, where P is the principal, R is the rate, and T is the time. Now, for all of these calculations, the time is always going to be 1 because it is one term, which makes life quite nice. So to calculate the interest, it's going to be equal to my principal, I'm starting off with $8,000, multiplied by my rate, which is 12, multiplied by my time, which is 1. And I'm going to hit enter. Now you'll notice I haven't divided by 100 because in the spreadsheet, because this has already been identified as a percentage, the spreadsheet will do the dividing by 100 for you, which is very nice. So we now know that we are going to earn $960 of interest on our $8,000. So over here, I want to add those two things together because the balance at the end of my first year is going to be the sum of those two. So I'm going to click on that cell plus that cell and hit enter. So here's my new balance. And this was our first year. So I'm going to write 1 here because that represents our first year. So this is number of terms. So now we're going to have our second year. Now our second year is going to be taking this balance and repeating the process. So I'm going to click on my cell here and go equals this balance over here. So it's going to bring that balance in. I'm going to hit return, and there it is sitting there. I'm going to follow this same process again, where I'm going to multiply that number by the interest rate, and I'm going to put it into here. But instead of actually typing out the calculation again, I can just drag that down. Oh, except it didn't work. So what have we missed? Oh, one thing that we have missed. Very careful. If we come back to here, in this formula here, when it's calculating that 12%, I don't want it to move down into the next cell when I drag it down. So I have to do one little thing to tell it not to do that. I have to put dollar signs in front of both the B and the 4. I've put those dollar signs in front of the B and the 4, which means the spreadsheet will always look at that cell. So even when I drag it down, it'll be fixed to that cell. Whereas when I drag down the other part, the B7 will now look at the new value there. So hit enter, and let's try again, clicking on the side, dragging down, and there's my new amount. And because I had a larger amount in my balance to start with, I now have earned more interest. And again, I'm going to want to add those two together. But again, instead of having to actually retype it in, all I have to do is click on the edge of the cell and drag down. And there is my new amount. Now for my third calculation, for my third year, because I've got all the formulas set up in here, I don't have to type anything out. I just need to drag down. The last thing I need to do, I'm going to highlight those two and drag down. And very nicely, it does the calculations for me. I'm going to highlight the three of these and drag down. And there we are. The calculations have been done for me. So at the end of my 3-year term, I now have $11,239 in my bank account. Fantastic. Let's have a look at another one of the problems. So let's have a look at what would happen if we were going to do part 2. So once again, I want you to do it on the part 2 tab. So firstly, let's highlight this here so that we have our information. And let's go to part 2, paste it, and then go back to the question, and let's highlight part 2 in here. And then let's go back to the question and paste that in. So there's our information. I'm just going to spread this all out a bit so we can read everything. And then again, we need to set up our table. So I want number of terms, and then I'm going to put in, oh goodness, try to do that without an error. And then remind yourself, we want the balance at the start, the interest, and the balance at the end. Again, if you don't want to type, we can just copy and paste that. Should have done that to start with. And there we are there. Again, what else did we have? We have our number of terms. This time round, our number of compound terms is going to be 6. So if I type 1 and I type 2, and then I highlight that and I drag down, I've now got 6 terms written there. Now, the next thing that we want to do is put in our information again. How much are we starting with? We're still starting with $8,000. We're still calculating our interest, but now because we're calculating our interest per half year, my interest I'm going to use is this value here. So remember that my interest is equal to PRT, and even though it's meant to be divided by 100, remember because this has already been identified as a percentage, I don't actually have to put the divided by 100 into the formula because the spreadsheet figures that one out for us. So that's going to be equal to our principal multiplied by this rate here because that's the interest rate. And remember, it's always going to be times 1 because we're calculating one compound at a time. And I'm going to hit enter. And it's not as much as last time, but remember it's only for half a year. Now I've gone back and clicked on this cell again, and I'm going up to the top and I'm going to pop those dollar signs in. Remember, we need those dollar signs in so that it locks and only ever looks at that 6% rate. And I hit enter again. And then finally my balance is going to be what I started with plus what my interest is. And I hit enter. And now I'm going to do my second row. So remember, we start with our balance at the end. So I just click on that cell and hit enter. I'm then going to recalculate my interest. All I need to do is drag that one down. And I'm going to recalculate my balance. All I need to do is drag that one down. And now I have my table set up for all the situations. So you always have to set up the first 2 rows, and then once you've got the first 2 rows set up, I can then highlight all the way across and drag down for my 6 terms. And now I find after 6 terms of calculating it every half year, my balance is going to be $11,348. have a look at the balance for calculating it every year, 11,239. So I'm actually going to make a little bit more money because it's compounding every half year, even though the interest rate was less. Okay guys, I'm going to leave you there, and perhaps you can try and fill in your tables and then see if you can do the rest of the parts. Remember, as you do more and more parts, you're going to have more and more calculations, so your table's going to get bigger and bigger. But remember, you only actually have to put into the table the first 2 rows, and then you can drag the rest of the table down. So have a go at that. Remember that this is going to be the number of terms. It's going to match the number of compounds here as well. All right, fantastic. Good luck, everyone.